What is up, everyone, and welcome to our course on the Python language basics. My name is Nimish, and I'll be guiding you through the next few hours in which we'll be learning the basics of programming in the language Python. By the end, you should know enough to get out there and start developing real Python programs. These tutorials are for those with no Python experience. If you have coded in Python before, likely you know enough that you may find these tutorials to be a bit slow. We're kind of expecting that you know nothing about Python. We also expect that you have little to no programming experience in general. We will be approaching each of these topics from a complete beginner's standpoint. So if you have plenty of programming experience but no Python-specific experience, likely you'll still be able to pick some things up, but you may again find things to be a bit slow. And of course, we're assuming that you do want to learn Python. If you have no interest in the language Python, this is probably the wrong course for you. Now, just a quick side note, I will be recording everything on a Mac. There is actually no operating system requirement for this course because we will be running everything in the browser through Google Colab. Okay, just want to make you guys aware of my operating system just in case things look a little bit different, but it really doesn't matter if you're running on Linux, Mac, or PC, should be fine either way. What are we going to be learning as kind of general topics? We'll start with what makes Python unique. I think it's a good idea to figure out why we want to learn the language that we're going to be learning, so we'll be talking about what makes Python great. Then we'll learn how to keep track of data, typically through various types of variables, arrays, and of course modifying them through operations. Then talk about how to implement logic. This will be done through if statements, while and for loops. Then we'll talk about how to implement responsiveness, and this will be done through the use of functions. And finally, how to create data structures through the use of classes and objects. Now, our specific topics start with, again, an intro to Python. We'll just talk about kind of why you should learn Python, what's it all about. Then go into variables and operators. Then we'll talk about collection types. This will be like lists and dictionaries. Then we talk about conditionals and loops, so if statements, while loops, and for loops. Then move into functions. We'll also introduce parameters and return types. And finally, classes and objects. So basically, all of the topics 2 through 5 will be kind of gearing towards this final one, classes and objects that bring everything together. So how are these tutorials specifically going to be working? Because we'll have some conceptual stuff and some practical stuff mixed in there. Now, most of the topics have a mix of conceptual and practical parts. This is especially useful for those of you who have never programmed before and need kind of an introduction into what the topics are and what each of them bring to programs in general. The conceptual parts will be kind of explained in the slides. For example, if we talk about variables, we'll talk about what they are, how we use them, and even why we would use them in code. And then we'll move to the practical parts, which will be explored through code examples. Again, these will all be run through Google Colab. We'll try to use some real-world examples to make these topics a bit easier to understand. I find that relating the examples back to something that is universal, like game development, for example, is a pretty easy way to understand the topics because game development encompasses basically anything that you could imagine that has to do with programming, and also most people have played games at some point in their life, so it's kind of easy to relate to examples. Okay, and the final goal is to get you up to speed with the Python basics so that you can start programming as soon as possible. This means we won't be able to cover everything that's in the Python language because honestly, this would be dozens of hours long. Otherwise, there is lots and lots to learn about any programming language. Python is no exception. Our goal here is to teach you the basics, give you some practical examples, and give you enough knowledge so that you can get out there and start programming as soon as possible. Okay, so I hope you guys are super excited about this course. I'm really excited to teach you. I love programming in Python. It's definitely one of my favorite languages. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, thanks for signing up, and we'll see you guys in the first section.